dude?
Not much. Just just enjoying the game and going through the, what is it, 12 stages of grief.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then like all prepared to go nuts and be angry, and PD has to go and get the monkey off the back.
With a beautiful one-timer.
With like classic like vintage PD. Been begging for him to do that more. And the power play too, like load up the power play with everyone that you need. I'd like to see them get a few more shots through. A lot of shots blocked by Minnesota right now, and the Canucks tightened up the D in the second half of that first period. The first half there, holy shit, Lankinen had to make a lot of big saves. He he kept us in that for the first 10 minutes. Minnesota was pushing real hard. Good on the Canucks. O'Connor moving his feet through the neutral zone, drawing that first penalty to kind of shift the momentum back to Vancouver's favor.
Mm-hmm.
I know that first power play didn't really get a shot on net, but it did move the momentum to allow for that second power play to get called. And then just really good puck movement, great shot by Pettersson. The only downs was the first 10 minutes there when they were kind of getting peppered and pushed in, but then they righted the ship. A really good penalty kill to finish the period to stay up 1-0. And yeah, just pretty well balanced team first period there.
Yeah, I mean, the big up for me is that penalty kill, and I've talked about it a few times tonight. The Canucks penalty kill has been lights out for a couple weeks now, and they're up to, I think Shorty said it on the broadcast, they're up to 5th best penalty kill in the whole league right now, which is huge because obviously moving into playoffs, which we're hoping they still make the playoffs, if you got a good penalty kill, you can get away with a little bit more and then do what you want. And then just, if you take a penalty, you kill it off. That's, it was the Boston Bruins style in the 2011 finals, right? They didn't care. They had the best penalty kill in the whole league. So they would do whatever they wanted and then deal with the ramifications when they did take a penalty.
It for sure, it allows you to play a little more aggressive. That's definitely a positive of it. And that was one of the big reasons why the Canucks took a chance on Derek Forbort with the 1-year contract. He to bring in that stability on the penalty kill. Unfortunately, he had the start of the year that he did, but now that he's healthy, ever since he's been continually in the lineup, the penalty kill has been progressively getting better. And now with Marcus Pettersson out there as well, they're going to really have a tough time scoring against the Canucks on a penalty kill when we have our goalies at the top of their games.
Yeah, and that Bluger Suter that they always start off with is unreal too, right? So good to see the Canucks developing their special teams. I mean, the power play has already scored 2, right? So far so good. I mean, the power play is not as great as we'd still like it to be, but at the end of the day, in the stats that you want but you don't really need, it's pretty much been in dead middle of the league, right? So it's not hurting them, it's not benefiting them at this point. So we won't give it an up or a down for the power play, except for the fact that it was Pettersson blasting one in on a one-timer, which is nice to see.
Well, and if Pettersson can bring that shot back to the power play, when Hughes comes back, you now have 2 weapons on the power play, which makes it even more lethal. So if he gets a little bit of confidence to shoot the puck, and you have Hughes come back doing the things Hughes does, if they could move the power play up a couple more notches, I mean, those are 2 very solid special teams numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And with the defensive structure that they play with, I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility for this team to make the playoffs and go somewhere. Like, they're not a horrible team. It's just they've spent 60 games trying to find consistency. It's just something we're not used to as Canucks fans. I don't think anyone around the league is really used to seeing this kind of a flip-flop season with so many different storylines on and off the ice. It's just been one of those really weird years, and it just kind of carried on into deadline day today.
Yeah. Speaking of that, let's move on then. We're calling it the trade deadline today because it was dead on arrival.
How punny.
So Before we talk about Aquaman, I want to get your thoughts on the fact that the Canucks did not end up making a move. And from what you heard from the management team and all that about the offers that they were receiving for some of their pieces, how are you upset? Where are you at with the Canucks not doing anything today, despite the fact that they have moved some stuff around earlier in the year?
I'm trying to find the positives. I'm very disappointed. The one I'm most disappointed about, honestly, is Suter still being on the team because I
Mhm.
think he probably could have garnered a pretty high pick coming back, and also maybe could have been included in a different package to get some depth scoring or a top six winger or even a top six center. Um, I imagine the market was tough, but I don't buy that the prices weren't good enough. I think we got caught in a position of didn't want to give and only wanted to take.
Mhm.
Sometimes when teams are asking for certain prospects, you need to kind of sell them on a different prospect or maybe look into the future and see, we were pretty deep at this position right now and we do have too many people in the pipeline for that position. Like there are some prospects you may have to move on from. Like we've seen it before. Like when the Gillis era would move on prospects early, and we felt like it was a bad decision. But you know, I think we haven't really had a fully structured plan or identity since the Gillis era. It's
Mhm.
constantly been retooling, rebuilding. We saw it with Benning, where we wasted Ham Hughes's trade year and he walked for free. And it just felt like management was again handcuffed from somewhere else. Someone else was telling them what they could and couldn't get rid of. And one of the biggest things I think is different is I've never seen a management team sewer their own players in public as often as this team. I get that Alvin and Rutherford are like old school cutthroat guys. They tell it like it is. But at the end of the day, if you're trying to improve your players' value or even their confidence, I really don't know that the way the Canucks have handled their PR this entire season is conducive to a positive future. I really think they need to do some work in that area, and it comes from the top. I was very surprised to not see Rutherford involved with any of the conversations today, as he
Mhm.
is the president of hockey operations, and he's kind of been non-existent this season, except for that one interview he gave right before the Miller trade to kind of do damage. It feels like a damage control interview. It doesn't like we had talked about it, felt like a very calculated move given who he gave the interview to. It wasn't just anyone. He gave it to the Globe and Mail. And so I just think I'm disappointed. I think it's a big failure to not gain assets for the future and also not reposition yourself in a place where you've said that the contract talks with Boeser are not going well, and he wants term, and that's something we just aren't willing to give him. I don't know after 60 games or this long of contract talks, and they were that far apart. How's it going to change overnight now, going towards July 1st? I mean, the Canucks have no leverage anymore. Boeser has all the cards. He can demand as much as he wants, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's a team on July 1st that gives him $10 million a season, just with the cap going up and stuff. And so it's tough. I get the loyalty and I get how he's been loyal to the club and things like that. But you look at a team like Boston that goes, well, we're not making the playoffs. Let's trade our captain and get some picks in return. Like I can't keep going through the same thing over and over. And it just is always just because we need that playoff money. And we don't even really
Wow, and
get that much in the
that
first round.
that brings us to the next thing, right? Like you're talking about, we were chatting earlier, like Aquaman, right? Like his fingerprints are all over these conversations that have been happening today. Do you think he's in there influencing this management team? Because, like you said, the whole management team is new, but the messages remain the same, and that says, it's not coming from anyone else but the owner.
Well, absolutely, because the press conference today from Alvin, there was no accountability, which is not their MO. Like him and Rutherford have been very forward and honest. And it's kind of got progressively less and less, and they kind of disappear further and further into the shadows, and they don't talk to the public as much as they used to. And then today, just the way he kind of talked in circles, um, said the market wasn't there, said it's because of Boeser's performance, and then at the end of the day says, "Oh well, we want to re-sign him," and it's like. Okay, what is it? Is he performing well enough to be re-signed? Is he not performing well enough to get whatever on the market? And then you look around the league and you see an Anthony Beauvillier go for a second round pick, or I can't even remember the other one I was going to use in an example, went for a third round pick, and they've got 4 goals this year. You got Pius Suter, who is a depth centerman who can really help a contender. He's got 17 goals this year, and you can't tell me you couldn't get a second, maybe even a late first round pick for him on the market, considering how hot the market was for sellers.
Mm-hmm.
And it just smacked of this desperation to make the playoffs, only to be swept in the first round just for an extra shared revenue. Like the first round is shared revenue. Aquilini doesn't even get that much money unless we make it to the second round.
Mm-hmm.
And with the current makeup of this team, unless they magically decide to play consistent hockey and find some sort of chemistry, if they limp in the playoffs, they're going to have the tough first round matchup. And I really don't see how this team, the way it's built, goes far. They just don't have the grit.
So let's talk about what is remaining on the team then, because you got Boeser and Suter, 2 guys that we thought might be moved at this deadline. They're still members of the Vancouver Canucks. Is there a way to turn these lemons into lemonade? What would that take with these 2 guys left on the roster?
Well, the only way to save face with the Boeser situation is to get him signed to an extension before July 1st. And I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if that is Boeser coming down a little bit to get his 8 years, or if it's the Canucks structuring it differently to make it work to give him 8 years. Honestly, with the cap constantly going up in 8 years, if you're paying Brock Boeser $8 million, it's not really going to feel like $8 million.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm trying to think about why the hesitant to give him certain things, and if you can make it so that he's movable towards the end of his contract. Like there's got to be ways to do it, and I just don't understand why it's been such a difficult contract to get done, given that Boeser has been so vocal about how he wants to be here and wants to be loyal. And I just feel like the Canucks are kind of using that against him and making kind of a fool of themselves by handling a free agent this way that's been with the team for a long time. It just is bad optics, and it really doesn't make me think that you go in free agency, who's going to want to come here? If you look at the free agents they've signed, and most of them have been traded or are gone within not even a year. Like it's just bad optics all around lately. And with Suter, I mean, I really don't see them re-signing him. That's been pretty clear that he wants $3 million or more a season, and they don't want to go up to that number. And he's going to walk on July 1st for free. And that one is the biggest mistake. I think at this deadline with the sellers, you should have just taken what you can get for him with all the depth in the lower center we have. In the minors and everything, we do have depth. We have Atu Ratu, we have Oman, we have Ty Mueller down there also pushing for a job up in the big club. So we have center depth in the bottom 6. So to move off of Pius Suter and maybe allow yourself some more structure going forward, I really thought that was a miss. But if he can help us push for a playoff spot, then obviously everything's going to be okay and everyone's going to forgive everything. But I don't have a crystal ball. I just go off of good hockey business that I see around the league and the way other teams handle their trade deadline. And it's been, 3-4 years in a row where the Canucks have kind of not handled business at the deadline. and we're kind of left standing at the altar, always the bridesmaid, never the bride. And it leaves me wondering why. And it always kind of falls back to Aquilini and him wanting that, his reluctance to fully go for the rebuild like some teams have. Like you look at San Jose, that's in their full rebuild, and you look at how young and exciting they are and how much of a team chemistry they're building together. And then you look at Ottawa, that's rebuilding as well, and they're starting to come up. But yeah, I was really disappointed today. I was expecting more for sure out of Alvin, just given their track record. But it's starting to feel a bit like the honeymoon's over, and maybe his first job. It's time to remember this is Alvin's first job as a general manager.
Right.
He's never had this position before, and a lot of the moves that were made early were Jim Rutherford induced, and this year has been more of Patrick take the reins, and we're seeing more of Alvin's style and lack of experience when handling both players and the public and the optics of the team.
Yeah, Brutality Blood says we'll take him if you don't. I did see though, Rick Dhaliwal was talking that apparently this morning the Canucks entered into more contract negotiations with Brock Boeser, and they did get close. So it does. I actually would not be surprised to see them re-sign him in the next week or two.
I hope so, but it did feel reactionary once the Dylan Cousins and Josh Norris trade was finalized. I believe the Canucks really thought Josh Norris was coming to the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah.
And they were prepared to send Boeser the other way in that deal. And when that fell apart, they went back to Boeser. And if you watch Alvin's press conference from today, I recommend anyone who's a Canucks fan go and watch it, because it really just, there's no answers. He talks himself in circles, and it's probably the worst clarity Alvin's ever offered. And it just reeks of they were putting all their eggs in one trade basket. It fell through and they had to backpedal, and now they're kind of handcuffed going forward, and Boeser holds all the cards. So we'll have to see what happens.
Didn't get to the Abbey Canucks. We'll update. They're just through the first period there against San Jose. So we'll update that in the post-game show then.
Sounds good. We'll talk to you then.
Nothing is perfect.